Everyone, in this video we are going to do a quick demo on output values. Understanding output values. Terraform has capability to output the attribute of a resource with the output values. Let's take example. We want a public IP address as an output when we create a public IP. So what is the exact meaning of it? So we have written a resource and the main task of this resource is to create a public IP. So once this public IP is created, we want to check the public IP address. To check the public IP address, we need to log in inside the Azure. Instead of login inside the Azure, we want a public IP address on our terminal. Okay, if we want the IP address on our terminal, what we have to do at the end, we have to mention the output block, the name of the output block, and we're good to take anything. Then we have to mention value is equal to, then the resource name, then the resource local name, and what we want an IP address. If we are not going to mention the IP address and then you are going to mention the value, so what it is going to have, it will have all the attributes which public IP is having. Okay. Second thing, an output attribute can not only be used for the reference, but it also act as an input to other module being created by Terraform. So we haven't discussed about the Terraform module. We are going to have very detailed discussion in our upcoming videos, but let's take an example to understand it. We have created a storage account module. Okay. A storage account module. Okay. And then one more module named as function app. Okay. In this function app, we need to use the name of storage account. If you are going to use output block in this storage module and just mention the name, then you would be able to use the storage account name module inside the function app. Otherwise, it would not be possible. Regarding this one, we are going to have a detailed discussion in our upcoming video, but this is one more functionality. That's why we need to use output block while creating our module. So let's do a quick demo to understand this thing in detail. So in this demo, we are going to create a public IP. And once this public IP is created to fetch the address on terminal, what we are going to do, we are going to use output block. Okay. So let's firstly create our two file name called as providers.tf and main.tf. So I'm going to click on use provider. And here I'm going to mention, as we do have discussed, we need to mention features block. And then currently we are using, I would say, the version 4. So we need to use subscription ID also. To fetch the subscription ID, I mention my subscription. I have mentioned my subscription ID, and here I do have mentioned what we need to create. We need to create public IP. Official documentation for Azure RM public IP. So this is my official documentation for Azure RM public IP. I'm going to copy it. And here I do have mentioned. I'll mention output hyphen demo hyphen RG. If you see here, first resource is basically responsible for creating my resource group, and the second one is basically responsible for creating my public IP. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to run a Terraform command to create the resources. Okay. I have initiated a command called Terraform init. I'm going to run a command called Terraform apply. See here, two of the resources has been created. If I check inside the portal, The resource group name is output hyphen demo hyphen rg, and here we are having our public IP created. But what we want on terminal, we want a public IP address. So if you want now, what we have to do, we have to select the public IP and then need to check the IP address. But we want these things in terminal. So what we have discussed, we need to mention output block, and I would say IP and underscore address. We are good to mention anything, and then we need to mention value is equal to my resource name, or I would say global name dot local name is example. Okay, as we do have discussed, the output block is generally responsible to output all the arguments. So what is the exact meaning of arguments? Let me show you inside the official documentation. You see here, all these values are called argument, like name, resource group name, location, and the other values. Apart from arguments, we do have attribute reference. As it is mentioned, in addition to the argument listed above, the following attributes are exported. It would be ID and IP address. So the output block is responsible to put the arguments plus attribute reference on our terminal. If we are going to mention the resource underscore name dot local underscore name, in this case, what we are going to have, it will list all the arguments and attribute reference on our terminal. If you want to narrow it down, what we have to mention after the local name, we have to mention the attribute or argument. If I'm going to mention resource name dot local name dot IP address, it will show the value of the IP address. Let me show you in Visual Studio Code. If you see here, what I have done till now, I have mentioned the resource name and the local name. Okay, so let me run Terraform apply to show the output. If you see here, we are able to see all the arguments and attribute reference. Okay. If you want to see any specific attribute or argument reference, what we need to mention, I would say I need IP underscore address. I'll mention this one and let me run quickly. Let me run Terraform auto hyphen approve. If you see here, we are only having IP address. If you want one more value, then what we have to do, we have to mention one more time this output block, and this time what would be the attributes I want name. Okay, so I'm going to mention at the end name, and this one I'll mention name underscore public IP. I will run it again. If you see here, we are able to see both the values, the IP address and name underscore PIP. So we do have one more option. What is the exact option? Rather than mentioning the output block two times, we are good to mention the output block single time only. Output, I would say IP underscore values. And here I'm going to mention value is equal to, I'm going to create a map. The key it would be my IP address is equal to, and the name of the public IP I'm going to mention here. If you see here what we have done, we have mentioned the output block, and the name of the output block we have mentioned IP underscore values. Then we have created a map. In the left hand side we have mentioned the name of the value which we want to fetch, and the right hand side we have mentioned about name, global name and the local name and the specific argument. Okay, there's one typo, let me fix it. Let's run it again. If you see here, we are able to see the IP address and the name of the public IP, and here we have created a single output block. We do have mentioned the IP address and the name of the public IP. In real time scenario, when we want a multiple values in output block, we don't need to follow this approach. Instead of it, we need to follow this one where we are good to pass n number of argument or reference. Okay, so Hi everyone, in this video we are going to discuss about the Terraform variables. So firstly we need to understand the challenge. Repeated static values in the code can create more work in the future. So in the last demo what we have done, we have created two resources. The one, it is our resource group, and the second one is our public IP address. If you see here, in terms of name, we have done the hard coding of the value. In terms of location, we have still done the hard coding value. And in the location also, the name of the public IP is hard coded and the tags. So the better solution would be to define repeated static value using variable. So what is the meaning of variable? If you see here in this code, we have implemented the same thing. The first one is our resource group. One is public IP. But what we have done, we have not done any kind of hard coding here. In terms of name, we have used variable. In terms of location also, in terms of the name of the public IP. So let's discuss how we are good to define the variable. So the first keyword to define any variable is variable, which we have to define. Then the second one is the variable name. It is recommended whatever the key we are having, the variable name should be same. So we are good to compare it or to good to understand it, what it is all about. And the description is optional in variable. It generally provide a metadata. What do you mean by the metadata? Sometimes we are not able to find a clear idea about the variable. So we can go through the description and get the detailed information. And the default value is the place where we are going to pass our value. We are going to discuss in next video what are the various options have to pass the values. But for now, we are passing the values using a default. If you see here, this one we have created and calling this value, what we have done, the first one is our variable and second one is our the variable name. So we have mentioned var.rg underscore name. So whenever we are going to run Terraform plan, automatically whatever the default value is present output underscore demo, it will be mentioned here. I would say output underscore demo. In the case of location also, we have done the same thing. We have mentioned a keyword called as variable, and then we have mentioned the variable name as location. And here we have a detailed description, I would say, the location where all the resources will be created. We have mentioned the default value as East US. So when we are going to run here, the value it would become East US. And in the case of the IP name also, we have done the same thing. We have mentioned the variable and the variable name is IP underscore name. We have mentioned description, the public IP name, it is optional one, but to use it for the metadata purpose. And here we have passed the virtual machine IP of the IP name. And here again, the value it would be virtual machine IP whenever we are going to run Terraform plan. So what are the benefits of variables? The first benefit is update important values in one central place instead of searching and replacing them throughout your code, saving time and potential mistake. What is the exact meaning of it? In the first approach, what we have done while creating the resources, we have passed the values. Okay. And in the second approach, what we have done, while creating the resource, we have created the variables, and in the variables, we have passed the value. In future, if I want to change my IP name from BMIP to, I would say, test IP, what we need to do, we only need to update the default values and good to run the Terraform and the value will be updated for us. No need to touch the core Terraform configuration file. This can avoid human mistake while editing. So what is the meaning of core Terraform configuration? I would say whatever we are having our resource block. So what we have to do, we have to only change the value in our variable. So in real time scenario, what we have to do, we do not need to create our resource and variables in a single file. We have to create a multiple file. The way I do have mentioned main.tf, it would be for our resources, whatever the resources we are going to create, it would be mentioned inside the main.tf, and whatever the variables we are creating, we are good to mention in variables.tf. So in future, whenever we need to do any kind of changes, what we will do, we will update the values for it. Okay, let's do a quick demo to understand all this topic in detail, called variables underscore demo. And I will mention main.tf, where all the resources will be created, and then good to mention providers.tf. So in the last demo, what we have done, we have created the public IP. So let me open the official documentation, and I will mention it as public underscore IP. Let me copy it and will mention the provider details from our documentation. So what we have to do, we have to create firstly variable, and the variable name, it would be good to mention it as rg underscore name. Then we are going to mention the description, the resource group name. I would mention the resource group name as public IP underscore rg. And again, to call this value, what we have to do, we have to mention it here as var dot rg underscore name. So whenever we are going to run our variable name, and automatically the value will come as pip underscore rg. Let me do it quickly for our other values also. So I'll mention it here as, let me copy paste to save our time, variable. I'll mention here at location, and I will mention here it as east US. Let me provide a detailed description. All the resources created. Again, I need to mention the same thing. Where is a keyword which we have to mention, then our variable name, and automatically the same thing it would happen when we are going to run the Terraform plan. It will update the value as HTS. I'll mention the name as public IP underscore name, the public IP name, and I will mention it as VM underscore IP. Okay. And again, what we have to do, we are good to mention it as PIP underscore name. So we have created our, I would say, the variable. As discussed, the best practice is to create a dedicated file name. We are good to mention any other file name, but it is recommended to mention it as variables.tf, so we can easily understand like what are the values we are going to update in this file. I'll update it here. Let me copy the path. So the first command, I'm going to run terraform init. Then let me quickly do the terraform plan. So if you see here, in terms of resource group name, what we are saying, public IP underscore RG. So from where we are fetching this value, we are fetching this value var.rg underscore name, and we have passed the value pip underscore rg. If I'm going to mention it here as pip underscore rg1, and let's run the Terraform plan again. What would happen? Let's see. Our resource group name has been updated from pip underscore rg to pip underscore rg1. Let me do quick Terraform apply hyphen auto hyphen approve. And the public IP name is VM underscore IP. Change the value from VM underscore IP to demo underscore IP rather than going in main.tf or any other file. As the name we have mentioned of our TF file variables.tf, we only need to update this value. There's one typo. We only need to update this value. Let me run Terraform apply auto approve. What it will do, it will destroy the resources and it will recreate with a demo underscore IP. Okay, and if you want to update, I would say our output block. So let me quickly do it for our public IP address. What we are going to do, we are going to mention as your RM public IP dot example dot IP underscore address. And as discussed, it is always recommended to create a dedicated file outputs.tf, and I will mention it here. Okay, and let me run it again. In the terminal, we will get our IP address, the public IP. And let me parallelly check like what is the name of our public IP. Is it VM underscore IP it is showing? Let me refresh it. So it has been updated to demo underscore IP. And here we are able to see our public IP. Hi everyone, in this video we are going to discuss about the variable assignment approaches. So variables in Terraform can be assigned values in multiple ways. So what is the exact meaning of the variable assignment approaches? In the last video, we have a very detailed discussion regarding the variable implementation. What we have done, we have created one resource group, and the other one which we do have created is a public IP. And we have created a two variable for our resource group name and the location, and the third variable for our IP name. If you see here, in each of the variable, we have passed the default value. Whenever we are running Terraform plan, automatically the default values are coming out. Apart from this, there are multiple ways to pass the values to a variable. So one is, which we do have discussed, variable defaults. The another one is input from user. What is the exact meaning of input from user? If I'm going to remove this default value and I'm going to run Terraform plan, so automatically at the runtime, it will ask me to pass the values of resource group name, and the location value will come from the default. Okay, command line flags. So whenever we are going to run our Terraform plan, we do have one option by using -var to pass the value of resource group name and the location, and it will overwrite the value of default. So we do have an options to create a dedicated file name called terraform.tf vars file, and whatever the variable value we are having, we are good to update inside the terraform.tf vars, and whenever we are going to run terraform plan, automatically the value will be fetched from the terraform.tf vars. And the last option which we do have using environment variables. So what is the meaning of this approach? In this approach, we are going to create an environment variable. So let's take an example. We are going to create an environment variable name called rg underscore name. Whenever we are going to save the environment variables, we have to append a value called tf underscore var and then the variable, I would say, variable name. So in this case, we are good to pass rg underscore name. If we are creating a environment variable for location, we will pass tf underscore var underscore location, or the same approach we are going to do it for IP name also. So these are the options we do have to pass the value for a variable. In the upcoming videos, we are going to discuss in detail about each and every options. Okay. Hi everyone, in this video we are going to discuss about the input from the command prompt. Okay, so let me firstly create a dedicated folder for it. I would mention input underscore cmd, and I'm going to create a two file name as main.tf and providers.tf. And here I'm going to copy paste the main.tf configuration and the providers.tf. Okay, so in this example, what we have done, we do have our resource group name. We have created a two variable group. Let me mention the default value. I would say east US. I have mentioned the default value east US, and the for the resource group name, I haven't mentioned anything. I'm going to run Terraform init. So what we have to do at the runtime, I'm going to run Terraform plan. Then I have to mention var as an argument. And what is our variable name? The variable name is rg underscore name is equal to, I would say, this underscore rg1, and I will mention it as hyphen out to mention it as test plan. So if you see here, what we have done, we have mentioned our command name called Terraform plan. Then we are having one argument called hyphen var is equal to what is the variable name rg underscore name we have passed, and what is the value of it is underscore rg1, and the whole value is getting output into test plan. Let me press on enter. If you see here, what has happened, the value which we have passed for test underscore rg1, it is coming here, and the default value which we do have passed for the location, it is coming out using sts. If we are going to mention, I would say, default value of the resource group name as test underscore rg, let us run the same command and see what is going to happen. So here in this case, what has happened? We have mentioned the default values test underscore rg and east but at the runtime we have passed the value name called test underscore rg1, so it has been updated. It means at the runtime, if we are going to pass the value, it will have the highest priority in comparison to the default value. Okay. If I'm not going to mention anything at the runtime, so the value will come the default one. See, in this case, we are having the same default value which we do have passed. Okay. So this is one of the way to pass the value to a variable. Okay. If we want to pass multiple values, so what is the exact meaning of multiple value? Till now, what we have done, we have passed only one value for a variable. It is like rg underscore name. If we want to pass the value for rg underscore name and the location, so what would be the syntax? Let me update here. It would be the same thing. Again, what we have to do, we have to mention hyphen var is equal to, then inverted comma, and inside the inverted comma, we have to mention location is equal to, I would say, west US, and I'm going to press enter. What we have done in this command, we have mentioned Terraform plan as usual, and we do have mentioned hyphen var two time, hyphen var here, and we have mentioned the variable name rg underscore name here also, and the location, and we have passed the value for our variable, and the whole configuration is saved into test plan, and we are good to run test apply test plan. Then the configuration, I would say the resource group will be created. Let me do it quickly for you. So a resource group has been created. So in the next video, we are going to discuss about passing the value of a variable using an environment variable. So thanks a lot for everyone. In this video, I'm going to implement input from user demo. Let me firstly create a dedicated folder for it. Input underscore user demo. And I'm going to create a file name called main.tf. And the second file, it would be providers.tf. So in the main.tf, I'm going to create a resource group. Let me quickly look into the Azure RM provider documentation, copy the provider part. Then I'm going to copy the resource group. So I'm going to create a two variable name. It would be like, rg underscore name. And the second variable, it would be rg, or I would say location only. And to call this value, I will mention var dot location. In the first place, I'm going to mention var dot rg underscore name. And let me update the default value. It would be rg, and the default value, it would be east us. And copy the path and open a cmd terminal. So what we have done, we have created a variable for our rg name and the location, and we have created a dedicated file name called providers.tf for our provider configuration. I would mention here Terraform in it to initialize. Okay, and I'm going to run Terraform plan. So in Terraform plan, if you see, we have passed the value test underscore rg, and the location, it is east us. So we are able to see both the values has been updated. So what would be the next plan? The next, it would be, I'm going to remove this one, the resource group name from default value and from location also. So if you see here, it is asking us to pass the value, the location. I will pass the location as east us, and then it is then it is asking for resource group name, because we haven't passed any default value for our resource group. Let me update the value. I would say check underscore rg. As we have passed the value, both the thing has been updated, the location and the name. Okay, if you see here, there is one note is present. You did not use the hyphen out option to save this plan, so Terraform cannot guarantee to take exactly this action if you run Terraform apply now. So what is the meaning of it? Let me run Terraform apply. If you see in this Terraform apply, again it is asking for the location and the resource group name. So what would be the best approach? The best approach, it would be, whenever we are going to run our Terraform plan, we need to in Terraform plan, we need to mention hyphen out option and with the plan name. If I would mention it as test plan. We are good to mention anything, whatever we wish. Like if you are working in dev environment, you'll mention dev plan. If you are working in for production environment, you're good to mention in the production plan. And the next time when we are going to run Terraform apply, it won't ask us to pass the value again. Whatever the values we have passed while running the Terraform plan, automatically it will be saved inside the test plan. And while running the Terraform apply, it will fetch the value from the test plan option. Let me do it quickly for you. Terraform plan hyphen out. I will say test plan. It will ask for the location. I will mention it as East US and I will say check underscore RG. If you see here, we are not getting any note here option. We are getting an option to run Terraform apply test plan to get the value. Let me run it quickly. See, it has created the resource group in the East US location and the resource group name is check underscore RG. And at the runtime, which means while running a Terraform apply, it hasn't asked for any values because all the values was fetched from the Terraform plan output name called test plan. Okay. Thanks a lot for watching everyone. In this video, we are going to discuss about the input from the environment variable. Let me create a dedicated folder for it. Okay. Again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'll create a main.tf and providers.tf. What we are going to do? We are going to copy paste the thing from our last. So in this example, if you see, we are going to do the same thing. We are going to create one resource group. We have mentioned the name of resource group name as test underscore RG and the location as East US. Instead of passing the value as default, we want to set up the environment variable for this variable name as location. What we have to do? We have to search for the environment variable. Okay. Then we need to click on environment variables. Then we need to click on new. What would be the variable name we have to mention? To create any environment variable, the first thing which we have to mention tf underscore var underscore our variable name. So our variable name is location. So we'll mention it as location. And here we need to mention the value. I will mention the value as West US. And I'm going to click on OK. OK. Again, click on OK. I'm going to copy the path. Okay. And then I'm going to go in this. Then I'm going to redirect to this folder. We'll do the Terraform in it. So in this example, we have only passed the default value of RG underscore name and the location we haven't passed it. If we are going to run the Terraform plan, let's see, is it going to ask us to pass the value for location or it is going to fetch the value from the environment variable. If you see here, we have only passed the RG underscore name, which is test underscore RG. The value is getting fetched from the default one and it is updated here. While in the case of location, we haven't passed anything. What is the exact meaning of it? We haven't passed any default value. And at the runtime also Terraform plan, it is not asking for the value, the first thing. And the second thing, we haven't passed the value using a hyphen var option. Okay. Still the value is coming as West US. So from where it is able to fetch the value? Again, let's have a quick look inside our environment variable, which we mentioned. See, in the environment variable, I mentioned East US. Let me edit it to, sorry, in the environment variable, we have mentioned West US. Let me update it to East US. Click on OK. Okay. If I'm going to run it again, let's see what is going to happen. The environment variable as East US, but the value which we are getting as waste US. So whenever we are updating anything in our environment variable, we have to open a new tab to reflect the changes. So I'm going to open on a new tab, and again I will copy the path. I'm going to run Terraform plant. Let's see. Here we are, which value we are getting? We are getting a value of east to west because it is taking the updated value I mentioned in our environment variables. If we are going to click again on this terminal, the Terraform plant, it will come the west US only. So whenever we are doing any changes in our environment variable, we have to open a new tab. Okay, see, it is getting a value of west US. Okay, so in the next video, we are going to discuss about the Terraform.tf pass. Hi everyone, in this video, we are going to discuss the variable definition file tf So firstly, we need to understanding the challenge. Managing variable in production environment is one of the very important aspect to keep code clean and reusable. So what is the meaning of it? Right now, what we are creating our resource group. Okay. And in this one, we are having, I would say, a location variable. We are having rg underscore name variable. Okay, but in real time scenario, we are going to create n number of resources in a single code. It would be like key vault creation also. It would be like regarding virtual machine creation also, storage account creation also. So if you're going to create all the four resource in a single go, you can imagine how many variables we need to create and parallelly how many values we need to pass. To overcome this kind of issue, what Terraform is recommending us to create a separate file with the name of star.tf was to define all variable value in project. So let's have a quick look what we have discussed till now. We have created main.tf file in which we have created the resources. Okay, all the resource will be created inside main.tf file. We have created a file name called variables.tf. In the variables.tf, we are going to declare all the variable. Okay, then we do have one dedicated file name called providers.tf that define all the providers. I would say in this providers.tf, we are defining a value for Azure RM, random, and Helm provider. In the same way, we are good to define terraform.tf vars file that define value to all the variables. What is the exact meaning of it? In variables.tf, we are going to declare the variable, and in terraform.tf var, we are going to define the value for variable. Here, we haven't mentioned any value for rg underscore name. Here we are defining the value for our variable. In the same way, for location, for our mi name, here we have defined the values for our variable. Selecting TF bars file. Organization can have wide set of environment, dev, stage, and prod. Yeah, exactly. In any of the real-time scenario, we are going to have a multiple environment like dev, staging, and production. If you have multiple variable definitions file like .tf bars file, you can manually define the file to use during command line. So what is the exact meaning of it? I do have mentioned we are having a different environment, dev, stage, and prod. We are going to one-to-one mapping between the dev, stage, and prod with name called, I would say, dev.tf bars. In the same way, we are going to have stage.tf bars, and we are going to have prod.tf bars. So in dev.tf bars, whatever the variable value which is related to dev environment, we are going to pass. For a stage environment, we are going to pass the stage related value for a variable, and the same way we are going to do for the prod.tf bar. So whenever we are going to run our Terraform plan, we have to use the hyphen var with hyphen file option, and then we have to mention our tf bars name. So whatever the output we are going to have here, it would be related to prod.tf var. The same way we are good to replicate for our dev environment and for our staging environment. If file name is terraform.tf vars, Terraform will automatically load values from it. If file name is different like prod.tf vars, you have to define the file during plan and apply operation. So here what we have done, we have mentioned our tf vars file name as terraform.tf var. So in this case, when we are going to run Terraform plan, we do not need to mention this var hyphen file. Automatically, whatever the value we do have mentioned in terraform.tf vars, the plan will be created. While in the case of having prod.tf vars, dev.tf vars, or stage.tf vars, whenever we are going to run Terraform plan, we have to mention our variable file name. Let's do a quick demo to understand these things in detail. I'm going to create one dedicated folder name as input underscore tf vars. In this one, I'm going to create a two file quickly, main.tf and providers.tf. Okay, and let me copy the file from our last demo. I'm going to create the copy for our providers.tf. So we are having main.tf and we are having providers.tf. I'm going to remove the value. I'm going to remove the default value. And let me remove it and create a and let me quickly create a dedicated file for our variables also. Call name variables.tf. Okay. So what we are going to do, we are going to create a dedicated folder name as terraform.tf vars, and in this one, what is our rg underscore name is our variable name. I'm going to pass variable name as tf underscore var underscore rg, and the same thing I'm going to do for the location is equal to a file name called main.tf where I have defined the resource block, then providers.tf where I'm going to where in providers.tf I have mentioned all the provider detail, then I'm having variables.tf. I have mentioned here all the variable which we do have declared, and parallelly in terraform.tf vars file I have mentioned the value for our variable. Let me quickly do our Terraform init and plan. Let's see from where it is able to fetch the values. I've initiated I have initiated the command called Terraform init. Then I'm going to run Terraform plan. Let's see from where it is going to fetch the value for RG name and the location. So whatever the value we do have mentioned in our tf vars file, terraform.tf vars file, it is able to fetch it. The location is east US. So here we are having east US. The location is tf vars underscore RG. The value is tf underscore RG. Okay. And let me quickly update the default value also. And let me run the Terraform plan. If you see here, I have mentioned the default value for our RG name as default underscore RG. Still, it is fetching the value from TF vars file only. So it means terraform.tf vars has high priority in comparison to the default value. Okay. real time scenario, what we are going to have, we are going to have dev environment, we are going to have the staging environment, and we are going to have the production environment. And in this case, we are going to have a dedicated tf vars file, one for stage dev, one for, I would say, for our staging, and the same it would be for our production environment. So let me quickly create a file name called dev.tf vars and let's run the Terraform plan. I'm going to rename this file name with a name called, I would say, dev.tf vars, and I will mention here rg name as dev underscore rg, and I will quickly remove the default value and let's see what is going to happen. So it is asking me to pass the value for our resource group name. It is not able to fetch the value from the dev.tf vars file, dev.tf, the way it was able to do so for our terraform.tf vars file. So in this case, at the runtime, we have to mention our dev.tf vars file. So what would be the syntax? As we do have discussed, it would be terraform plan hyphen var hyphen file is equal to dev.tf vars, and I would say hyphen out to dev plan. So if you see, we do have mentioned our resource group name dev underscore rg. The same value is reflecting here. In the same way, we do have mentioned the location as east us. The value is coming as east us. So file is present. We do not need to mention anything while running our Terraform plan. But if we are having a TF vars file with a different name, so at the runtime, we have to mention the TF vars file. So in the next video, we are going to discuss about the precedence of the variable declaration. Hi everyone, in this video, we are going to discuss about the variable precedence. When variables are declared in your configuration, they can be set in number of ways. We have discussed we are good to pass the value of a variable using default option. With the next option which we do have discussed using a tf vars file, it can be your terraform tf vars file or according to our environment dev prod or staging one. And the third one which we do have discussed using an environment variables, like what we were doing, whatever the variable name we are having, initially we are updating tf underscore var and then our variable name. Okay. And setting variable in command line. In setting variable command lines, what does it mean? Like at the runtime, whenever we were doing our Terraform plan or Terraform apply, what we were doing, we were passing the values using a option called hyphen var with the variable name and its value. So these are the options which we do have discussed in detail to pass the value for a variable. So Terraform loads variables in the following order, with later source taking precedence over earlier ones. So the first one is environment variables. The second one is terraform.tf vars file if present. The third one is terraform.tf vars.json file if present. And the fourth one is star.auto.tf vars or star.auto.tf vars.json file precedence in lexical order of their file name. And the fifth one is any hyphen var and hyphen var hyphen file options on the command line. So we do have very detailed discussion about all the possible way to pass a values to a variable. So in terms of precedence, the fifth option will have the highest precedence. So it will be like this to from low to high. So if we are going to use hyphen var option, it will get the highest precedence, while if you are going to declare the same value for a variable using environment variables, it will have the list precedence. Okay, let's do a quick demo to understand these things in detail. I'm going to create a dedicated folder name as input underscore precedence. And here I'm going to mention our main.tf. Then I'm going to mention our variables.tf and the same thing using, I would say, providers.tf. And I will quickly copy the values from our last lab. So here I'm going to do a hard coding for our location value. I would mention here as east-US. Okay, and I will copy this value inside variables.tf, and I will mention the value for this variable name as default underscore rg. Then I'm going to copy the providers.tf here. Okay, so what we have done, we have created the three file. One is main.tf where we do have mention our resource block, and here what we, in terms of location, we have hard coded the value east-US, and we have declared one variable name as var.rg underscore name. In case of variables, we have defined the value for rg underscore name as default underscore rg. I'm going to copy the path. I'm going to do Terraform plan. And as we have discussed multiple times, it is going to fetch the value of the resource group name from variables.tf and name as default underscore rg. See, whatever the value we do have mentioned in default one, it is able to fetch the value. So what is the first thing we are going to do? We are going to create an environment variable with a name called, I would say, for our rg underscore name. Let me do it quickly. I would say tf underscore var underscore rg underscore name. I will mention it env underscore rg. Let me click on OK. 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 And let me open a new terminal to reflect the changes. Copy path. CD. And I'm going to run Terraform. If you see here, we are not getting a value default underscore rg for our resource group name. We are getting a value name called as in env underscore rg. What does it mean? If we do have declared the default value and then you do have declared using an environment variable, then this one will have high precedence in comparison to the default value. So what is the next second thing which we are going to do? We are going to create a file name called as terraform.tf files, and here dot so in terraform.tf vars file, we have declared the rg name as tf underscore rg. And let me run the Terraform plan again and see. Name as tf underscore rg. What does it mean? It means like if you're going to pass a default value, it will get the value. If we are not having the environment variable, I have passed the value as environment variable. Then the environment variable RG resource group name will be present. If I'm going to mention terraform.tf vars file, terraform.tf vars file, it will get the precedence. And the fourth one, which we are going to discuss, to pass the value using hyphen var option. And let's see. So at the runtime, I'm going to run terraform plan hyphen var is equal to rg underscore name is equal to cmd underscore rg. You see here, it is not able to fetch the value from our terraform.tf vars file or the value which we have declared inside variables.tf. Whatever the value we have passed at the runtime using cmd, the same value we are able to fetch. This video we have discussed the precedence of the variables value. So thanks a lot for watching the video.